Hello, everyone, and welcome to the summer season kickoff show for the American Reach Mahjong League. This is Korak. I am joined by Andrew and Michael. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
How are you guys? Thanks so much for everyone that's tuning in.
Well, it should be a pretty entertaining show here. We have a lot to go over, but let's just jump right into it. First, we have B2C. We had the beta leagues because there were so many people in that came into the new league that we didn't necessarily know what to do with them all. But Edwin, who organized the league, decided the best way to handle it was throw them into new beta league divisions so they would be able to establish whether they were in B1, B2, or the newly established B3 for this season. We'll start off with B2C, and we can see here Michael, Philip, and Andrew F. all qualified and promoted to B1. Luke and Andrew made the playoffs. I believe Luke advanced and Andrew unfortunately didn't, but we can look at these stats here and you see a bunch of really solid play. The three of the top four people with an EV over 800. We're talking big average wins, very low deal in averages, and just really dominant performances at the top. And of course, even when we get down to the middle and the bottom, it's not like anyone played badly. You see these spreads, and you have a look, especially like Everett sitting there at third to last, but the average win of 5,200 and the average deal in of 3,500 just really rough. Couldn't put enough of those hands together and dealt in a lot, unfortunately. And that's what you have to do. You have to balance the win, how much you're winning, how much you're dealing in, and how much you're dealing in for. And if you can put it all together, you'll rise up the ranks. And all right, how do you guys feel about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was speaking from the perspective of someone that was playing in this pool, just to be part of a sorting league made things really interesting, right? Because you weren't exactly sure who you were sitting, virtually speaking, of course, at the table with. Someone that's new to Mahjong, someone that's new to this league, or maybe online play. And then you've got other people that have been playing for a very long time, and you've got your Luke Morgans and Michael McLeods and Andrew R's, who are all very prolific mahjong players.
And that's one of the things we were always trying to encourage, especially with these new players. They'll come in various skill levels. They're all welcome, but eventually you're going to get thrown into it and see how you do. And that's the whole point of the league here. And we're really proud of how everyone did in that first season. But any further thoughts you have since you were in that league, Andrew?
Yeah, I just think this was a very a again, just I'll reiterate, a very exciting league. You just saw some, and of course, not only did I play in this league, I commentated some really exciting matches that came out of this pool. I mean, there was one evening where we didn't just see one Yakuman, we saw two Yakumans, not just in the same night, but in the same at the same table. So I mean, things like that happened in this pool, and I know we're going to be talking, seeing some highlights later. I don't know if any of those Yakuman are going to come up, but I mean, that's kind of some of the really highly volatile, like exciting stuff you saw come out of B2C this season.
Yeah, and the more I look at the statistics, the more I'm impressed. Because even there you see Cruz at 12th with a very strong win rate, not a particularly bad deal in rate. So even pretty deep in there, you're still performing pretty well. Pretty hard to advance. And again, even if you don't promote, even if you're unfortunate and go down, uh, this is your chance to make your claim, and it's not free for anyone. And we'll especially get a little more into that as we get to the top league because it was rough there. I think let's check out B2B now. And the first thing that jumps out here, of course, we have Michael, who is in this league. But first of all, we have Alec and Haru just rolling over this league, especially Alec with almost 300 points. And this is over 20 games, averaging almost a plus 15 every game. 10 first, 1 fourth, an amazing stretch here. You see all these people with really good scores, high average wins, low deal in rates, low averages. And even as you get towards the middle, it's not like anyone's playing badly here. You had some really cutthroat playoff spots. The competition, we'll get into that a little bit. But everyone here, I know Clinton, I had Clinton because he was a substitute in the inaugural beta league, and he was rough to play against. I lost a bunch of points there. And even though I ended up winning that division, he was really tough. So, Michael, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, we can see here that there was some. Alec obviously was the dominant player in this league, but both him and Haru, I think were definitely like dangerous players to play against. I was pretty scared being at those tables, and I think it was interesting to see how this chart evolved over the course of the season because early on, Clinton, Michael G, and Carl were also pretty pretty well situated for promotion spots, and just maybe took some hits there near the end. Just had some unfortunate games. Carl still had that absurd 5.1 5.1 deal in. I don't know if that normally I think should have carried him maybe a little bit higher than it did. His EV is strong. Um, One thing that I noticed in B2C and here is because I think a lot of these players in both of these are maybe not used to league play yet. And so you see a lot of variation in the right side of the chart here with the call and the Ricci rates. You have someone like Travis who stays closed most hands, and then you have someone like Tommy who is much more aggressive with that 71% participation. I think there was a lot of people having to adjust to play styles, to people who play very differently than them, play very differently than they do on ladders. So
Yeah, and I think this is, if I can jump back in and just speaking on that point specifically. This is my first time ever participating in a league, and I just remember, I was fortunate enough to advance into B1, and I think there are a lot of factors into that. But I remember getting crushed at my first table. I was with Andrew R. and a couple other people, and I mean that first match, I got that first table, that first week, I got crushed, and I was like, I'm going to really have to adjust my play here because you, like you just said, you really do have to. I mean, there's a different mentality and a different way of playing when you're talking about playing in a league setting.
Yeah, I want to go back to something that was mentioned a little bit ago. Look at those stats for Carl: 23% win rate, 5% deal in rate. And as you can see, pretty close to the middle of the table. That's so rough. Obviously, the average deal in's a little high, but you'd think that's going to be excellent almost anywhere. An EV of almost 800, which, as we can see, is the fourth highest in the entire division, and just had some unfortunate breaks there. I know as we got very close to the end before the cutoff for the playoffs, there was a really tough struggle there. And between Michaels, Travis, and Clinton, and Clinton ended up on the wrong side of it. But again, a 95.1 is nothing to be ashamed of. And if you're looking at seventh with an 85.3, it just goes to show how cutthroat it was. You got towards those spots near the top.
it was definitely cutthroat, and Travis made a last minute rush to that promotion spot, or to that playoff spot rather. I think he was right in the middle of the pack before the last four games, and just stepped up the game. So that was an unexpected kind of turnaround for this pool.
Now, as I recall, Haru was up there with Alec almost the whole season. In fact, I think Haru was above Alec for most of it, and they just didn't have a particularly strong last session. So, as I recall, that 100-point gap is a little misleading.
I think that's right, yeah. And we don't want to dwell on the negative here, but I think part of the reason for Haru and Carl was that there was one missed game So they are both minus 30 to where they would have been otherwise.
Yeah, that's
Um,
really rough. We obviously don't want to encourage that, but we have to get the games in. And of course, the logistics of scheduling isn't particularly fun, but we're generally pretty flexible. We have the ability to schedule your 4 games. You don't have to schedule them all back to back. You can even do one on 4 individual days, but still, just getting 4 people over a 2 week period doesn't always happen, especially some people who have erratic work schedules. But we do all we can here to facilitate everything getting done. And you can see a pretty strong division here. As was mentioned earlier, very different call rate, reach rate, participation rate across some of the players. But that's going to happen all the way up and down the individual divisions. That one of the things in a league is not everyone's going to play like the people you've been playing with. The kind of exposure to people all across the country is a big goal of the league.
Well, and you think about how many people, the ARML is launching, this second season, this inaugural season, coming off the heels of the pandemic, where a lot of people found Mahjong Soul and Tenho, and that ladder play, and learning to play online, and now having to um, make that transition. It just made, for some very exciting games. And like you said, Korak, I mean, none of these, I mean, you look at all these win rates almost all the way down the board, and it's like, a quarter, close to 25% all the way up and down. And that's pretty crazy when you look at that. But you still have to make a decision about, well, only 3 people are going to advance.
I think we're going to advance for sure. We still have the playoffs. But
For sure.
speaking of that, let's move on to B2A. I believe we're joined by Brett, who is in this league. But first, let's go over these stats. Garrick and Peter with EVs over 1,000. You had in this division specifically people who are just running away from the pack. When you look especially at some of
in
these
both
numbers,
directions.
well, the points will eventually come from somewhere, but I mean, we look at this, and I would be terrified if I were at plus 107.2 and sitting in the ninth position.
True. That's only 2 spots above a possible demotion to B3. Um, the only one guaranteed B2 spot in the league.
yeah, this spread is insane.
Yes, B2A was a combination of a few of the new players, but mostly the people that had fallen near the bottom in the inaugural Beta League and were trying to fight back up. Of course, notably here is Ada, who a lot of people were very surprised had fallen down here. And Ada
Mhm.
definitely showed up.
Ada,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, commentators, I feel like we were always having, we were missing Ada, right? Our schedules, because of course this is all volunteer. We didn't catch any of Ada's games until late in the season, but there were always conversations of like, what's happening to those tables? We need to take a look. We need to, became a priority to make sure. We of course tried to make a priority to catch everybody at least once, and I know that was certainly conversation happening about this pool specifically.
Yeah, and you see so many people here around a 30% win rate, which is just not sustainable, but they did it over the course of 20 games. So that's a huge congratulation and testament to their skill. Of course, we also had Edwin, the league founder, had made his way into this division, and we'll talk a little bit more about him as we transition to the playoff. As mentioned, we had a few in the B1, B2 promotion games, and a few in the B2, B3 demotion. So at the top, of course, you see that top match, and that's just terrifying. The B2A had a fifth slot for a promotion, but only one person in this game could get it. So you had 4 players going all out, and you can see the ridiculously close score there at the end. There was a last hand change of who ended up advancing, and Matthew moved up.
Yeah,
In
I
the second,
remember. that game, and Dakota almost taking that spot.
Those games were absolutely wild. I mean, the win and deal in rates aren't going to be that relevant over the course of 4 games here. But in the second group, you had Travis and Luke manage to advance. In the B2, B3 games, there was an extra promotion because there was a withdrawal in the B1 in the B2 league. So they had 5 spots, and Blaine managed to sneak in as the higher of the third places. Edwin and Cruz advanced out of the first group, and Austin and Patrick out of the second, and they will remain in B2. Edwin had
Okay.
been struggling just all season. I believe he'd only had 1 win coming into 2 wins here as we look at it overall, but that includes the one in this session. So going in was 1-6-9-4 and really needed a win and got it there at the end.
I'm looking at Blaine's 4 consecutive second place finishes in the playoff.
Well, that's something else that you're going to see across the divisions is those big numbers of seconds and thirds don't necessarily help you.
Mhm.
And you just have a lot of the latter situations where you're just trying to avoid last place a lot of the time. And you look at these people like Edwin and Blaine and go, 4 fourths out of 24 games. How are you anywhere near demotion? And it's because if you're not also getting those wins on the other end, a league setting is going to punish you for it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, back in the one of the other ones we saw Andrew with only 3 losses, but as we're, we don't want to dwell on this, but 2 of those were Yakuman dealings, so it just happens, right? It's those lasts can be huge potentially, and even thirds can be pretty harsh.
Yeah, for a lot of people, this is going to genuinely be the first time they're genuinely experiencing plus minus scoring because the UMA isn't particularly big. We use a version of WRC scoring, but a first place bonus of 15 isn't going to be anything like on Tenho, where a first may be 75 and the points don't matter, or on Mahjong Soul, where a first may be 130, or even in lower rooms, 80. And the difference between first and second, a good first and a good second, is enormous. Whereas here, it's just 10 points. Of course, those 10 will add up over time. It's something you just have to adjust to and play to.
This is
But
definitely my first experience with a point system like this. I knew how they worked. I just had definitely not played in one. It was certainly eye-opening.
well, I think that's about it for the B2. So let's head to B1. And we talked about Ada in B2A going, how did Ada end up there? Well, the same feeling was, how did Crow end up in B1? And Crow said, you know what? I'm going to show you why I'm good enough to be better than B1. And absolutely dominated this division from start to finish. Sichuan was close for a little bit, as I recall, but that was about it. B1 was in a very interesting position as 8 people were promoting. The idea was we were going to expand A2. Turns out there were a bunch of people who took a break during the summer because, of course, it's summer in A2. So we'll get into that in a bit. But as you can see, the cut line for promotion was effectively plus minus 0. You look at these stats, you see a bunch of people over 6,000 averages. You even had 3 subs in here, which kind of threw some chaos into B1. But I think the story, there's no way to get around it. It's just Crow rolling. And it's got to be intimidating, but you have to remember that's just one person. And if you have 8 spots, that's fine. You just want to mitigate as much of that damage from there and pick up the points elsewhere.
Well, and do we know how many people had cheats with an EV of close to 1100, and then down on the opposite end, and it's a sub, but with Brian with a EV of 1455.
Well, of
That's
course, 4
only
games
4
where you have,
games.
4 games, you have top 2 every one of those games. Well, that's going to be a little misleading here. I think Sylvie, on the other hand, performed very well here with 11 wins. Was a sub for the full season, and just really strong play overall.
Okay. No, absolutely.
And you can look at this list. Sichuan played very consistently throughout the season and was a number two to Crow basically the whole season and looked pretty strong. Zilong was in my division in the inaugural Beta League. Very strong player, just really had a rough last session and proved what could be done here in B1 and locked up that third spot pretty clearly. And there was a fight as we got down towards the cut line. The last session, I believe, had 7, 8, 9, and 10 all facing each other, which was a bit of a ride to watch. And similarly, around the cut line, there was a game with Rachel and Ryan. And no, let's see, who was that? Was it Rachel, Ryan, and Sarah? I think two. Yeah, it was Sarah and Ryan. Anyway, sorry.
I think one of the big shifts in Crow's favor was there was a game near the end of the season where we were watching I think number 1, 2, 4, and 5 players at the time, all at the same table. And if memory serves, that was Crow and Sichuan at the same table. I can't remember who else was there, but I think that's where Crow really pulled ahead.
It only takes one big table to score to get up there. Now I remember it was Sarah and Ryan, and the concern there was for Rachel not being in that game, but managing to survive here. Ryan, I believe, dealt in the very last hand and dropped a position, and unfortunately, dropping a spot. Now you look at this list, and the one that jumps out at me is Pio. Pio was projected to be near the top of this division, just had a really rough season overall. Plays a pretty volatile play style, and well, this can happen to you when you're pretty volatile. But if you're trying to promote, sometimes it'll work out and sometimes it won't. But really strong play overall, and I think we're ready to head day 2. So A2 was originally supposed to be 4 promotions. There was an extra demotion out of A1 and then a hiatus. They ended up with 6 slots, though we didn't know it until the very end. So Nathaniel managed to sneak in with a 0.1 advantage in the very last game. That's as close as it gets there.
That razor.
It was a real nail biter, and yeah. I remember Nathaniel posting in the chat afterwards, seeing that his heart rate was elevated so much after that game.
Yeah, but the story of this division was just Lush and Minko were rolling almost the whole season. Minko took a couple rough late sessions, but still very solidly in. Amy came storming back to take the 3rd position, was sitting around the cut line going into that last session. Or I believe it was around just plus 30 or plus 40, and really turned it on. Of course, Amy won the most recent tournament, which was this last weekend, the Richinomi Open. So that and a promotion to A1, that's a pretty good month.
Yeah, for sure.
You're right. Yeah.
Congrats,
and of course, getting to, for those at the tournament, I mean, it was awesome getting to see the ARML, some ARML people playing, in-person mahjong. That was a real treat.
Attach faces to names, always one of those big things. And similarly, I look at the bottom of the league here and I go, Claire, poor Claire. And
yeah,
I watched her games from the very start. She dominated her first game and then just had a horrible run there for the end of that session, the full next one, and started fighting back and just couldn't put it together in the last session to get past that last hurdle.
And do I remember was that one of the season's first Yakuman that Claire ended up being involved with?
I believe it was a Kokushi, but
yeah, I think it was.
Yeah,
it's just super rough here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, we
I
have
remember.
Tucker Onwe, who's normally one of our commentators, unfortunately also going down. And Aaron was in the playoff to make the A1, A2 going into this session. And unfortunately, again, just couldn't put it together in A2. But on the other end, as we talked about Amy, Minko, and Lush, Andre was basically sitting in that position most of the season. Not in that much danger, but still reasonably solid there. And Anthony was sitting, you see here at 28.1, was right at that cut line going into the last session because it was around minus 70 and just stormed through that table.
That's incredible.
I thought you meant the the cut line for promotion.
No, cut line for demotion just absolutely
Oof.
dominated that table.
Wow.
Similarly, Gina was at the cut line for promotion there for a long session, was above the cut line for a while, and just had an unfortunate, I believe, fourth or fifth session. But overall, I think the stats kind of speak for themselves. Luce with that
Yeah.
ridiculous average of 64.27 on a win and a 6.3 deal-in rate.
That's what stands out to me. I mean, that 6.3 deal in rate, that's incredible. I mean, that's one insanely defensive player, and they're still winning really big hands, right? You know, and that EV is close to breaking 1,000. So,
Well, I
um,
know there was at least one, and I believe two Yakuman in there, and that's an easy way to boost your average.
Oh, that'll do
oh,
it. Yeah.
that will do it. Yeah,
But as we
absolutely.
talked about
That
in some of the
dealing rate
earlier
still.
divisions, drastically different call and Ricci rates just across every individual player. You can see kind of more stabilized numbers between
Mm.
32 and 35% on the call rate and Ricci rate between 18 and 21. So you're getting a little more stabilized, but it's not like everyone's following it. And of course, Luce is outside of both of those ranges, and you can see how that turned out.
But then 2 through 5, every single one of them is on the higher end of call rates.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, it's one of those. If you can play aggressively and win, especially aim with a 26.2 win rate, is amazing.
Yeah, I think it shows just knowing when to call not to is a huge, obviously we know that that's a huge aspect of good play in this game, but I think you can really see it here in these stats.
All right, let's head to A1. As you can see, I'm sitting there right above the cut line, and the ongoing story of all of A1 was just survive. We had an awkward position where we had a substitute in because someone had taken a hiatus going into the season, and then we had one person, June, here, just nothing worked out. I felt so bad for June the whole time, but the issue is that puts so much pressure on everyone else. If you have someone that's just
Sure.
taking those big hits, it means the points are going elsewhere. And I was talking about session 3. I was joking, as long as the cut line's here at minus 70, I don't feel that scared, but it feels like it might creep up a bit. And yeah, it did.
hmm,
It
Yeah,
was a mad scramble, especially in that last session. You had Bishan, Oliver, Max, me, Dustin, and Lucas, even caused an outside chance to come back. Simon was pretty close to the cut line. Uh, Everyone just absolutely scrambling to stay in that top 11.
I think just from an outside perspective of someone watching the season, it was as cutthroat and as exciting as I guess you would hope that the A1 league would be. Just for the pure entertainment value of such someone watching, wanting to see some crazy, exciting mahjong happen.
I'm
Yes,
just
you see here.
marveling at essentially the cutoff being whether you're positive or negative. Like that is nuts.
Yeah, there was so much stress here. And Huang really pulled out at the end, but that was just on the strength of a very strong final session. Everyone was sitting in that 110 or lower position going into that last session, but Huang just
Mhm.
took control of the last session and
And
dominated.
Yeah, I
They
believe
ended
he
up over
started.
200, and that's how you win the league. That's for sure.
Yeah, I believe he started at like below Kenyan like around the
Hitting
plus
around
70,
70, I
75.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah,
3
and then
wins over 50 points, and then even a final fourth that didn't matter much. And just absolutely rolled and is the
27%
champion
win
of
rate.
spring.
there
And
was
You know,
some
27% win rate. Well, you look at all these players and you see ridiculous win rates. I'm
Yeah.
going to go off on my own stats here. 23% win rate, less than 10% deal in rate, and
Oh
I'm
my.
on the cut line.
Yeah.
fun and
Arch World.
everyone's average hand score is right about 5,000 or more. Whether it's just under 5,000 or in Oliver's case, getting up there in six. Um,
Oof.
but I mean, big hands, low at the very top half. Those dealing rates, and Jeremy, our hardworking broadcaster who's broadcasting this stream for us. Actually, thanks, Jeremy. The at second place with that plus 107, and then third place you have that drop to plus 77. It's just crazy how you watch these points move. 202, 107, 77, and then it was just mentioned earlier. If you were positive, if you were negative, it was demotion. But you with the plus 0.9 in the clear, right? By a percentage.
By the skin of my teeth. And even with the
Yeah,
substitute, Jonathan, we were worried coming into the season, any sub being thrown to the Wolves in A1. And Jonathan played very respectable with 6 wins, uh, pretty good statistics. Would have ended up in the demotion zone, but that's kind of what you'd expect from a substitute. But
sure. Yeah,
absolutely played perfectly acceptably for a substitute. Great play there by Jonathan. But just
Yeah.
overall, you can see everyone just fighting and scraping. And as I said, it's that cut line starter on minus 70. As long as it's on minus 70, I'm feeling fine. And then after the fourth session, it was minus 40,
Yeah.
minus 50. And we're going, After
yeah,
the fifth session, it was like minus 30. And we're all going,
yeah.
And
I
then in the
think
last session, I took one look at it and I said, if I don't end up above Dustin, there's a very good chance I get demoted, and just barely managed to escape in there. And I was one of the earlier games. I believe Dustin had the first group of games along with Kenyon and Jeremy. And when you're sitting in that situation, you're looking for the championship and didn't take big minuses, obviously, sitting at minus 0.7, but it was enough to fall down to the 12th spot again, just because of how the points are distributed in A1. And it was terrifying to play at. I will say, I never want to go through that again.
yeah, just looked like remembering the discussions in the A1 players were having over the course of this season. I feel like the number one story of this is, as you said, like kind of every session that went by, feeling the water kind of rise and become more and more stressful, and people becoming more and more anxious. And then I guess the other story would be Huang's like once in a lifetime flow
Oh
in
my
those last
god.
games.
Those were some amazing hands, that's for sure. But even going in, Jeremy was leading A1 for multiple sessions, and then going into the last set of games that Huang then stormed through and ended up putting Steve in some danger. Steve had taken some big hits there and went from, I believe, fourth in that going in, and was sitting not far ahead of where Bishan is until he managed to pull a nice win in the third game, or second place in the third game, to mitigate all those losses, and kept himself above water. And similarly, in the last game, Max managed to keep himself above water, but just barely. Oliver and Bishan managed to survive. I managed to fend off Lucas and stay above Dustin. And again, you figure at this level that minus 76.6, okay, yeah, that sounds like around where you'd expect the demotion line to be. But Lucas being demoted at minus 23 And that's not even the worst one. Dustin sitting there at -9 going down with the effective cut line being 0 was rough.
Yeah, and he was commentating the game where he saw that he was going to be demoted, if I recall, and he took it like a champ. But
Yeah, I think it was casting the playoff at the time because I went ahead and did that game on my own stream. And yeah, we
oh
had to come
right,
back and report, and it's like, oh
yes,
man,
that's what it
no, he
was.
took it like a pro, and there's a very good chance he'll be back up because he played really well, good average, bunch of wins, and you look at these. I like the participation rate, and you have Bishan who's very low, but honestly, everyone else is pretty close. Like between the 50 and 60 for basically everyone here. You're going to see a bit of change between how much you call and how much you reachy. But again, these call rates, you have June and Bishan on the low end. Everyone else is sitting there roughly the same amount.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that back in the B2, C, and B leagues that there was a lot of variation. I did think that there was going to be somewhat of a standardization, not fully, of course. People have their individual play styles, but you see a bit more regularity. So I thought that would be interesting.
And as you can see, the other thing is the EV average is higher for A1 than the league as a whole, which I mean, you'd expect that as well. And similarly, the DLN is significantly lower. Interestingly, the winning percentage is lower too because they're willing to fold a lot more.
Right, right.
Right.
But
A
yeah,
lot
All
of
right,
these.
I think we have some clips coming up now.
right.
Yes. Well, this hand looks pretty good.
That when compare, this is a dead Kanchan, and this is really dangerous to be in this situation. The dealer has just gotten Tenpai on the east
Yeah,
and
this
the
is
red.
already-
The east might come out being once dropped, maybe even the red
that.
being the Dora indicator. However, we have a chasing Ricci on the west and the 7 Mon, and it looks like those are entirely live except for one 7 Mon. And
Oh my
there it
god,
goes.
this is going to be absolutely massive.
So Toy Toy Yaku Yaku
Wow.
home roll to
Wow.
This is something I have always had problems with. Live by the Ricci button, die by the Ricci button. And that's what we had here.
Yeah.
Um, that is
And deals into the dealer Son Baimon. That's worse than a Yakumon.
since just
Oh man.
oh, there it is.
Yeah, and right after the turn, right after you reach E and that pops into your hand on the screen there, you have to just be the agony when you see that.
Agony.
But yeah, on the
36,000.
other side, yeah, for was that Michael there that won that hand? If I'm reading the-
Yes.
just yeah. So if you're Michael, just what a night for you, what a game, and how exciting it must have been to see that come together like it did.
Yeah, just a casual 38,300 point win in East
Yeah,
One.
and that almost certainly sent him up to the top, shooting up from that plus 71 and some incredible early momentum.
What do we got going on in this hand? So more dragons. This is one of the Yakumon we were discussing. That from B2C, and in fact, this was a game I was commentating with Tucker. And so this is Everett here
Looking to see if anything else
who is building
there
Oh
his
my gosh,
dragons, and the
don't-
dragon comes out right there, half flush. Dai Sangen just Yakumon 48,000 points. Just nasty hand.
Yeah, if
Yeah. As I recall, we asked Andrew about it because that just looks really rough. The answer was a misclick. And
it
you
was a
just go, oh
misclick,
no.
yeah.
And it hurts so much, but you're sitting here. And Dealer Yakuman, you're obviously not going to turn it down, but it just hurts so much. And he still had a chance to redeem himself in the playoff. I don't think he ended up making it, but this was still got into the playoffs. It wasn't like this ended Andrew's season.
No, and he fought his way back up to the playoffs, and I was helping commentate some of the playoffs that he was in, and he had another rough couple of games. I don't even think there was that many misplays to end up at that -60. I think things,
Sometimes that's just mahjong.
right, exactly, yeah.
That's just it. It's how you deal with stuff the game throws at you. All right, I think we have a third clip.
Nice. So this is one of Pio's games. Travis, Stanley, and John. Oh, and look at another.
They can hear the original commentary right now.
Oh, can they?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Wow.
Oh, this is come on.
Second
No,
Yakuman. This is the second Yakuman
Oh.
of this table.
Although
This is unbelievable.
I guess the
and
clip
what a
actually
great hand
looks
for
different.
Luke.
Wow.
It was Mr.
The
Head. That's
stats
Andy,
on the
right?
right.
Who had-
We're not hearing
Yeah,
it in
so-
ours, but the
Yeah.
audience is hearing
First,
the whole
East was
thing
extremely
on the
safe
first
against that,
play.
but it ends up
So,
dealing
yeah.
into
And
Luke,
also-
who's
Please
already
keep
having an
quiet on
incredible
those. But anyway, yeah, you look at
with a
this
dealer,
one, and Luke
Yakuman now
just
has
that score.
116,000.
That's ridiculous. And the Dama Yakuman here already having a fantastic game at 66,000. And you can't dodge that. There's a 0 overflow Kokushi here with a safe tile against the Ricci.
Yeah.
Again, just unavoidable. And
That
you
that
feel
really
so
is.
bad there for him that there's nothing you can do about it. But again, still had that chance to get into the playoff. Even after this, there's a testament to how strong the play was. That even
Look
after
who-
dealing into these two Yakuman, still got a chance in the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Oh my god. To
Yeah,
deal with
there's-
two Yakuman.
That's the stealthiest
Two dealer
like,
Yakuman.
Kokushi pond I've ever seen.
Yeah, you cannot defend against that one. It's safe against the Ricci. Again, 0 overflow. Nothing.
Yeah, it's almost more painful when your dealer Yakuman deal-in was not in any way a misplay.
It's not like the band is that bad either. It's definitely a hand that you'd like to be able to win and advance this with, but just nothing you can do there. And that's how Mahjong is. Sometimes you have to deal in, but a beautiful hand here by Luke, just really racking up the score. And this ends up getting Luke promoted. I'd say specifically this right here gets Luke into the playoffs, which then he advances out of.
Yeah, what would that score have ended up being? Like a +90?
If
Something
you were
like
at
that?
100, I don't remember what the final score was, but if it were 110,000 with everyone else under 30K, that'd
Oh,
be
that's a plus
plus 100.
100. Oh my god.
Yeah. So one game can certainly turn things around.
Sometimes when the commentary team is saying like, "Oh, there's a chance to come back from the, to the cut line from negative whatever," I'm like, but then you do see games like this, and so technically, yes. You know.
Well,
Over 100,000 points.
and this was just
you just can't give up hope, and that's a big
Right.
thing. There are a few
Yeah.
people who are down like 300 going into their last game. Okay, yeah, you're probably in trouble then.
Hi.
and this was
But
such,
generally, just you look at this, and again, Luke played it perfectly fine. You see over on the left, it's played fine. The reaches are fine, and just there's nothing anyone can do about this.
Yeah. Andrew, you were saying?
I was just saying this was such a surprise for the commentary team, at the time, because we were getting ready to switch over. We were on a short break, and we were getting ready to switch over to another game that was happening concurrently when just, we happened to notice that Luke was 10 pie. And we were like, we got to jump back in like right now, because what if we see a second Yakuman? And
Is that why The
That's
stats are already switched over to
yeah, and
another
that's
division.
what. Yep, and that's exactly why I was confused at first. But that's why the stats are switched because we were 1 foot was already out the door on this game. We were getting ready to check in with Po Travis and them, and yeah, when we saw this tempi, we had to jump right back in, and I mean just in time. I mean, I think that East came out seconds after we talked about
That's
this.
wild.
Yeah, it was wild and just speaks to kind of that volatility we were talking about. That's in B2C.
Mm-hmm.
Well, plus 100 will help any score, that's for sure. I think we have one last clip here.
Looks to be aiming for Junchan.
Although this could become all terminals for what it's worth.
That's true. You draw the 9-mon, you're extremely happy. And will Luce go for this? Yes. Oh, I love this play.
Oh, yes. And we've seen Luce make very good plays for value throughout the whole season. And I believe this would be the
step
first.
by.
Holy shit!
Oh my goodness. 9-mon,
1
so. And they're all in the wall. Oh, except for the 9-mon. Christian has one of those, and one of those has been discarded. So there's just one so that's in the wall. But that 9 comes out! Oh my goodness.
Holy cow, a Yakuman for Luce! All terminals. I believe the first all terminals that we have seen.
Man,
This is
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just deal with that toy, maybe some sort of Junshan, and wait, what?
You just don't expect the Chinro.
No.
Like,
No, I mean even here, one more turn here when you see Luce getting a nice little improvement. Doesn't take the tempi here. Yeah, right here. Calls it and says, "I'm going for the goods."
that's really such a ballsy decision.
I love that.
That's so bold, honestly.
Ends up
payoff
winning the division is
immediately.
2 Yakumans. This one especially, because you just deal into it's like, okay, Roan, maybe you have some Dora in there. Toy Dora 2 seems reasonable. And wait, what?
And it's I feel like maybe if this were later in the round, you might kind of start to get a hint that that's what's going on. But this was the middle of row 2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With a close, with an Onko there as well of the 9 so
Yeah.
you don't even think it's tempi here. Sure, you're a little suspicious because you see the 8-9 cut, but you're figuring it's toy. It doesn't even matter. And if I deal in, what's the worst is going to happen? Well, this.
That. That's right.
yeah. Oh, what's the worst that could happen? Famous last words. Just
If I'm Lush there, I'm like screaming every time I draw a Monzu tile. Like that 3, I'd be like, oh wait, no. Ah.
man. Yeah, and just what a pretty looking Yakuman too. Just
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely on the rare end. Of course, you have the 3 reasonably common ones of Desangan, Kokushimuso, and Stoanko. You have Shosushi, which is reasonably rare, and there's kind of everything else. And at the very end, you have like Sukatsu.
or in 9K.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tenho or Pure 9 Gates or non-furry Tenkokushi 13, any of those that are just really rare. So seeing one of those in League was really nice to see.
All right. I forget, do we have the Rinchan clip in here too, or?
I think we're running out of time, so we're just going to go ahead and skip over to the new division starting in B3. Yeah, we had a few other Rinchans would be really nice to go over. We're going to try and keep these a little bit time boxed.
Sure.
So as you can see here, we have a whole bunch of new players and a 34-player division, which is going to be, I don't know whether they're going to say amazing, a complete mess, or probably some of both.
Yeah, it's going to be chaos, but it'll be good, fun chaos, we hope.
So 34 players, you can see 11 promotions. So if you're in that top third, you'll go up. Rather than do a brand new beta league, we didn't have enough people to where it really justified going out of new beta leagues. So just throw everyone into a giant pool. There won't be any overlaps in games, obviously, but oh wow.
I do think this was the way to go. Yeah, like it'll be fun to watch how this ends up and whether or
Yeah,
not anyone wants to
pure
put together
chaos.
an over 30 player league again.
Now, of course, if you're in B3, you can't be demoted, so go for broke, especially if you're down in like the minus 80 after a couple sessions. Fight back. If you go down fighting, that's one thing. If you just give up, then that's when you should feel a little bit worse.
Yeah.
So I think there's some, on that point, I think there's a chance we see some like really explosive hands because people are going to go for it.
Yeah, and that's how the incentives are. Again, there's nothing to lose. You're going for those top 11 spots that'll get you into B2 next season. But speaking of B2, let's check that out. We see here 5 demotions, and that is 7 promotions. These numbers may change towards the end of the season. We figure out who will be taking hiatuses, whether people are joining the league, or any of that other stuff. But as of right now, we see 7 promotions, 5 demotions. And this is B2. You're going to have a bunch of the people that were sitting in the middle of that B2 league that didn't quite go up or got in the promotion playoff, didn't make it, or alternatively made it in the demotion playoff and avoided that demotion. And you also have some that came in from B1. Of course, notable names here are Edwin, Pio, Blaine, fellow commentator, and this league looks like it's going to be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and I think some of the people who didn't quite make the cut or just had some unfortunate last couple of games from the B2, plus the B1 demotion, I think B2 play is going to be really strong actually this coming season because I think they're going to be more prepared or more ready, more hungry to get out and up to B1. So.
Yeah, and this is kind of your chance to get up. You're sitting in B2. It's like, okay, as long as you play well, you should be doing. You should be on that positive side and looking forward to promoting. But people I'm really interested in are the people that came down from B1 because those are some solid players, and the second one are the people that are in that B2A playoff and didn't advance because that was a winner take all playoff. That's such a rough situation. Everyone just has to go for broke all the time. Can they maintain it over the course of a 24 game season? All right. I think we'll head to B1. And of course, the first thing that jumps out is that's a lot of promotion slots. Again, we're going to try and expand A2. And the only reason that we don't have 20 people at A2 this season, we had a ton of people taking summer off, as I mentioned earlier. But 5 demotions, and is that 9 promotions? Yeah. Whole bunch of interesting names here. I think B1 is, we talk about B3 being a bit chaotic. B1's also going to be very chaotic because you have people who came down from A2. You have the people that dominated the beta leagues. You have people who were, a couple that were in B1 and just kind of hung on here. But I reckon a ton of these names.
Yeah.
This league will be fun to watch.
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of talk even before, like, over the last couple of weeks about how B1 is going to be, extremely cutthroat and kind of a Shark Tank. So I'm a little scared for myself.
I was going to say the same thing. I am very nervous going into this summer season, looking at some of my competition here, some of these other names, and just, it's going to be fun.
It's not like you look at this and you're like, oh, okay, like almost every name on here, I'm like, I'm a little scared about that person.
Yeah, these are a lot of these names are people that have, whether it's through the league or through past tournaments, have made a name for themselves in some way. So, it's I'm looking forward to it, and we'll see if I can hang on.
Yeah.
Now, I've met at least a majority of the people in this league, so again, it should be very interesting league to watch, but expect a lot of chaos as well. So let's move to A2. And so the first thing jumps out is 7 promotions. Well, that means we're going to try and expand to A1 as well. We got that kind of bold shape with the 34 players in B3. Going to try and shove everyone up a little bit, and that would make it a much wider A1 division, so you wouldn't have any of those plus minus 0 cut lines. Again, I'm still salty about that. I will probably be salty about that for years. But anyway, so you have forward emotions, as was the case last season. You have an interesting mix here, of course. You have people that hung on in A2. You have a few that came down from A1. Again, specifically Lucas and Dustin, I expect to do well this season because that's just so rough getting demoted at those levels. And they both played really well. And you also have a bunch of people that came up from B1. Crow, of course, being the headliner there, dominating B1. And Crow's been known in the Mahjong community for a long time. So I would expect Crow to do well.
Maybe, yeah, it'll be curious to see, who in this pool goes on, some more tears.
All right, I think we head to A1. And we see 16 players, and this does not look like an easy group.
No, it sure doesn't.
This is going to be rough. It may be not quite as rough as last season simply because the substitute kind of made things a little more awkward, but there isn't an easy out in this table. I don't see anyone that I go, yeah, I feel reasonably confident about that person. Everyone here is just a solid player. You're looking at the top division, so you'd expect that. As I said at the beginning of last season, you'd love to win the championship, but all I'm trying to do is not get demoted.
Right.
All right, last place avoidance.
Well, and that's something we talked about earlier, is just avoiding last place. Well, like obviously in the standings, but within games, just avoiding last place isn't going to do it. And we could go back and pull up some of those stats, but I believe Lucas only had 3 or 4 fourths and ended up demoting. I think Kaz only had 3 or 4 fourths and ended up demoting. So you just have to go for it, and some of the times they'll work and some of the times they won't. Yeah, Kaz had 4. Lucas did have 5. Took another one in the last section. That's right. Eric, you see Eric's in there at 4, but he's in reasonably good shape at 29.4. But then again, you look at me on the cut line with that 7 force, but it's balanced with the 8 wins. So it's just a matter of, can you put it all together? And you look at A1, and again, that just looks rough.
Yeah, and this is the league that, again, I think everyone, we've talked about it, but this is A1, so hopefully it's a fun season, and I just expect to see some huge point swings here again.
I don't think you'll see anything like a minus 400 though.
I certainly hopefully not for who.
Hopefully not. As we talked about earlier, if you're in that situation, you have nothing to lose. Just keep fighting. And if you sink more, it's like, so what? Are getting demoted anyway? Did you go down? Did you surrender, or did you go down with a fight? And as long as you held your head high and fought, that's all you can ask for.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I believe we are at our hour mark. So I think we're going to try and wind this down. Any closing thoughts? I'm just
very, very excited. This league is continuing to grow, and just even this last weekend, I heard so much positive feedback from people at the New York City tournament about what this league has done for the mahjong community as a whole, and I just think we're gonna have some another season of some really really good mahjong, and that's just exciting. That as a commentator and as a player, it gets me hungry to see what's coming next.
Yeah, I really love what this league is doing. My roommate and best friend actually had to convince me to join because I was worried that I'm not that good enough. I've only been playing seriously for 8, 10 months or something like that. But I joined and I've really loved trying to, get more into it. And I feel like I'm a part of the American Ricci Mahjong community more now that I've joined than I did before, which has been really special for me. So I encourage people who are watching to give it a try, even if you don't, even if you're not that confident yet.
I've been playing for 5 years, and before long in the league, started the negative gang joke, which I've loved the entire time. Like the whole goal of negative gang to leave negative gang and get your score back into the positives. Like it's just been really fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more commentary next season. And good luck, everyone.
Best of luck, everyone, for sure.
All right, then I will say my closing thoughts as well. There are going to be fascinating games in every division, but my final thought is please don't make me have to get ±0 to avoid demotion again.
And
One is going to be absolutely cutthroat, as are all the divisions to a certain extent. And we look forward to seeing some great mahjong. Good luck to everyone. This is Korak along with Brett, Michael, and Andrew, and of course Jeremy behind the scenes running the stream for the American Reach Mahjong League. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a nice night.